But Jeff, I'm assuming that Ian and Linda will be showing up.
Yes, I know Linda was having some difficulty with Comcast. She and I have been texting, but I don't know why Ian is not here yet.
Okay. Well, we will hold on until one of them joins us.
Maybe I should have my ice cream now, Ashley.
Hey, it might give you the sugar rush you need to make it through.
It does make me think of having a cookie now.
Oh, not a bad idea.
Okay, you're all making me hungry. Quiet.
So again, for any members of the public who might be watching or applicants on, we're just waiting for a quorum and then we'll begin the meeting.
Ashley, we did have a couple late continuances if you would like them right now.
Yeah, why don't you?
Just run through them, then you can go through them and announce them once we've actually started. So I'll just run through them all and you can check them off. So 13, Commercial Wharf. Brand Point Club. Kane at 12 Pound Road. Meyer at 307 Pulpus Road. The Land Bank at 17 Aurora Way. And Ackhang 10 at 21 Meter Street have all continued to the 26th.
Wow, that's a lot at the last minute.
We'll be out by 6:30.
Not anymore.
Where is Ian?
I'm messaging Ian right now.
While I think about it, I will be off island for the meeting on the 26th, so I won't be here for that.
Thank you for the heads up, Maureen.
Yeah. We will be celebrating our 50th wedding anniversary.
There we go.
You going somewhere exciting?
Yes, we are.
Good.
So looking forward to that. There he is.
Here we are. And who is the 508-228? Is that Linda?
Yeah, that's me.
Okay, awesome. We're all here. Perfect. Okay, so we will begin the Nantucket Conservation Commission meeting for May 12th. Just as a reminder, this meeting is being held entirely remotely via Zoom. So all applicants are participating again remotely. I ask that anybody participating, please mute your device when you're not speaking so that you're not picked up by the recording. I also ask that anybody wishing to speak, please either raise your hand in your camera window or raise your hand virtually and wait to be called on. And please state your full name when you speak. Other than that, I think that's pretty much the spiel. So we will begin tonight's meeting under public meeting, public comment for items not being heard this evening.
We do have one. I can just read it really quick while we're waiting. So Burton Buchan just said he wanted to say that the Long Pond analysis was really informative by Vince at last night's select board meeting. So for those, just to summarize that, for those who haven't been following, the former select board member, Bob DaCosta, had some questions about whether or not some dredging needed to occur relative to the culvert between Long Pond and the north end of Long Pond. And Vince and Morgan from our office went out and did a number of transects through there and showed pretty clearly that there's more than adequate space for herring to travel through that culvert between the ponds, and that we didn't think dredging was needed, and that our recommendation was that the area on the north, for the north head of the pond, there's a bit of a sand washout that's created a little bit of a sandbar, that we work with Linda Loring on permitting some level of native plantings there to stabilize that loose soil and kind of take care of that problem. And we've spoken to Linda Loring and they're really interested, and I think that's where that's going to go. So little science for everybody last night. Really easy science. So
Great. The select board needs science, so that's important. All right, so thank you. I think that's our only public comment. So the following items are continued tonight under notices of intent. We have 13 Commercial Street LLC at 13 Commercial Wharf, continued until May 26th. We have Brant Point Club LLC at 6 and 8 North Beach Street and 4 Dolphin Court, continued until May 26th. We have Kane at 12 Pond Road, continued until May 26th. Meyer at 307 Pulpus Road, continued until May 26th. The Land Bank at 17 Aurora Way, continued until May 26th. And then Hang 10 LLC at 21 Meter Street, continued until May 26th. So with
Is
that,
it home now?
right, well, hopefully it won't be too long. We will begin tonight's meeting with Nicholson. Excuse me. We're going to begin the meeting with consideration of amending the Conservation Commission regulations as part of the recodification process. Sorry, saw it and then missed it. And Jeff sent that out this afternoon.
yeah, sorry about the delay on that. I had to break it out a little bit. So just to run through what this was, is the town about 2.5 years ago embarked on the path of trying to standardize the appearance and format of all town regulations, because our regulations didn't look like health didn't look like, some of the regulations from Plus, they didn't look like some of the ones from town administration. In perfect honesty, they were all kind of a hot mess and disorganized in different formats. So the town engaged the company that does all of our bylaws and did that to standardize the formatting and renumber and do those so they look more similar to what the town code does and make it searchable online into one document. But since we're changing formats, requires adoption by the boards of the new format. So the ones that we sent around, there's almost word for word, the text is exactly what we have now in our regulations, but the format looks different. So instead of, just as example, like coastal banks now are section 2.05 of the regulations. Now, I don't remember off the top of my head, but it's essentially like section 390 dash something else. So it's really more of a clerical change, but we need to adopt those as a change. And then once we've adopted those changes, we can then start the process to formally amend those for content at a separate time.
Okay. So Jeff, then do we just need a motion to accept the codified regulations?
Yes.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions before we do that? Ian?
Yes. I would like to, I would like my fellow commissioners to consider supporting a motion that we don't adopt them until we actually revisit our regulations, which have been holding fire for what, 5 years now? And especially since, we're coming close to where new members may be appointed. I would like us to be dealing with that with our existing board. And so I wonder, shall I address Jeff through you, Madam Chair, about this?
Yes, because I was on this piece before the next piece, but if it can be done at once, I guess that's a great question for Jeff.
So I think from our end, and again, I totally hear you. And I know we actually have an agenda item at the end of the meeting tonight to talk about regulatory changes and where we are with that, because I know we have a draft that's ready to go in the new format for you guys to review and set up. But I think we would still ask to adopt these because the advertised public hearing on these is solely related to the codification. That to amend them, we'll have to post that separately. But I think once we get this ball rolling and get that accepted, we can make all of the changes in this new format. And I still reasonably believe that we can get that accomplished before the 30th of June.
Great. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Madam Chair. So I move to adopt the reformatted regulations.
Okay, so motion made by Ian, it looks like seconded by Mark. So by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Arisman, aye, Golding,
Aye.
Phillips,
Aye.
Williams.
Aye.
All right, that carries unanimously. And now we'll do a little repeat back under notices of intent. We'll start with Nicholson at 24 Brewster Road, represented by David Haynes.
Good evening. How's everybody? This was continued last time because we didn't have a file number. We still don't have a file number. We found out why, and the matter has been corrected or being corrected. It was all in, the check was submitted to the wrong place and it got lost in the mail. So we should be proceeding. Mark, DEP is working on this, but we still don't have a file number, so I assume we need to continue again.
Yep.
Do you want me to get, I mean, I can go over the project again, but could cause quorum issues, I guess.
No, I think, I don't think we have any questions from what I'm seeing about the project.
It was straightforward.
So I think unless there are any questions or public comment, again, we can wait and see if public comment comes in.
Great.
I think we would recommend continuing to the 26th.
Okay. Jeff, can you stop the screen share?
Yes, I can.
Thank you. Awesome. So if there is not any public comment or questions from commissioners, David will continue until May 26th.
Please.
Okay. So see you in 2 weeks.
No, I'm up next.
You're up next. All right, there we go then. So the next item is 9 Columbus Avenue Nominee Trust, 9 Columbus Avenue, also represented by David Haynes.
Good evening again, or afternoon. Beautiful day. Excuse me. This project is a continued from last time. It's a house. It was located within 50 feet of the. Excuse me. I'm sorry. I don't know how to turn off my own phone. It's building a house. It's out on Columbus Ave. It's in a floodplain. Our land subject coastal zone flowage buffer zone to the pond, long pond out there.
Visit us online at ngroup.com/payment assistance.
Excuse me. And the land subject coastal storm flowage comes up and intersects the slope and intersects some retaining walls, which makes that a coastal bank. Last time we went through the alternatives analysis, that basically this whole property is within the buffer zone to the coastal bank, and there's no place to build an addition. We've asked for permission to build the addition and also to redo the septic system, incorporating an IA system in it, and moving the leach field farther from the wetland and the resource areas. we went through that scenario. So waivers are requested. We've asked a waiver for one will not adversely impact, no reasonable alternative, but also overall net improvement. The septic system does not have to be replaced in its current condition. It's still functioning as a Title V system, and it's still a viable system, but it is closer to the wetland and it doesn't have an IA component. If we build the addition, then we also have to upgrade the system, including an IA. So it turns into an overall net benefit for the resource area with the leach field farther away and with the IA component. Last week, we talked about actually doing some enhancement of the buffer zone that might be make this a little bit more palatable to the commission. And so what we've done, you'll look on this new plan, we propose 3 planting areas. They're all within land subject to coastal storm flowage. Actually, the northern one is just a little bit out, and but still relevant. And we're proposing doing about 1,550 square feet of planting in the buffer zone and in land subject to coastal storm flowage and on coastal bank. And this will include the planting of 69 shrubs as shown. Area A will be shrubs with sweet pepper bush, beach plum, and inkberry, approximately 5 to 6 feet on center, and then underseeded with a New England wetland conservation wildlife mix. The area to the right along, there's a shrub line right along between the lawn and the wetland area along the pond that we're planting with a row of basically sweet pepper bush, about 5 feet wide and through there. And then to the north section, we've got planting area C, which includes right next to the house, which is considered a coastal bank by policy because of the slope. Going to plant the inside area with bearberry, and the outside area with sweet fern on the slope, and then down at the toe of the slope to plant that area with beach plum. That way we're increasing the vegetative buffer along the wetland areas and in the land subject coastal storm flowage. And that northern area, we're actually replanting an area that's considered a coastal bank. So we'll get some, which is currently now it's currently lawn. And so we're planning on restoring some of that area, but giving it back some wildlife habitat value. With that, I believe, and no cultivars and no use of fertilizers. Obviously, after the town meeting, nobody can use fertilizers. That's a good one.
We'll see.
Yeah, you need fertilizer police. So basically, that's the changes from last time are the addition of the vegetation of the planting. That 1,500 square feet represents 5% of the property. So, I mean, I think it's significant. It does give it back in significant areas, gives back some of the 50, some of the 25 even. And some coastal bank is being enhanced. So with that.
Thank you, David. Any questions or comments from commissioners? And I really appreciate the addition of the native plants. Mark?
Yes, thank you, Ashley. David, on the coastal bank side, the 128-foot expansion, are you just building in that deck? You aren't increasing ground cover. I shouldn't say ground cover. You aren't increasing the footprint at all, are you?
No, that's actually on a second-story deck that has a patio underneath it. That's got a retaining wall around it. That's also a coastal bank. If you the photographs of that area, I think I have a photograph.
So I'm looking at it right now, David, and I just was. You'll be enclosing the bottom half.
No, I think it's on the second floor deck, not enclosing downstairs.
Okay.
It's all off the ground. over the existing patio.
Well, I think it's probably a benefit in terms of getting the AI system in there is how I would look upon this. If you were going to increase that ground cover on that side, I'd be probably not so happy about it. But where you're enclosing a porch above, I think I can rationalize that in my little head.
Thank you, Mark.
It's a hard lot because the house was built in 61 and it's 0.7 acres and it's tucked right in there. There's no place to get away from it, the resource areas.
Don't see a pool yet.
Yeah.
Coming.
All right. Any other questions or comments from commissioners? Looks like not. So we'll see if there's any public comment. Does not look like we have public comment at this point. Jeff, do we have everything we would need to close?
Yes, you do.
David, would you like to close?
Yes, please.
Is there a motion to close? Mark?
So moved.
So Mark made the motion. I'll give you the second, Linda.
Cool.
So by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Arisman, I, Golding,
Aye.
Phillips,
Aye.
Williams.
Aye.
Right, that carries unanimously. Thank you, David.
You're welcome. I'm back again.
That moves us on to Lehrman Dynasty Trust at 18 Washing Pond Road, represented by Mark Ritz, and I believe we have Dan Bailey on for this one as well.
Yes, good evening. Mark Ritz from Site Design. I'm joined by Dan Malloy from Site Design and Dan Bailey from Pierce Atwood. We're back before you to further discuss the groin reconstruction project at 18 Washing Pond Road. At the last meeting, a number of commissioners had raised a few issues that they wanted additional information on. We provided a somewhat lengthy document containing photographs documenting the site, previous permits, etc., and answering a number of those questions. I'd like to go through that briefly with everybody. The first issue that we addressed in our supplemental information letter was the sort of status of the groin prior to the January 2022 storm. And we provided 19 photographs from 2010 through 2020, through late 2020, showing that the groin was in existence, in good shape, performing its function in the eastern corner of the existing bulkhead. So in terms of how groins are maintained, we basically do a visual inspection at regular intervals, and if we don't see any broken boards or damaged piles or severely sort of hourglass piles where they get abraded by sand near the water line. Basically, if everything looks intact and the wood doesn't look rotten, and it's standing in place, we don't dig down to investigate what's going on underground. We just leave it be until it actually shows signs of visible damage. We've been on site multiple times to repair parts of the bulkhead. There was a whaler replacement. The cap has been replaced a couple of times. So we've been on site, we've been inspecting it. The groin has very much been there as evident in those photographs through varying conditions. Summer conditions where there's sometimes a beach in front of the groin, and winter stormy conditions where waves are breaking on the groin and on the bulkhead. So that has been there and was in good shape prior to the January 2022 storm. Addition to that, I believe Seth had requested that we take a look at some possible alternatives to the groin replacement. Now, The groin and the bulkhead are designed as a cohesive system. In this part of the Nantucket shoreline, we have bidirectional sediment transport. We have, during conditions, sort of milder wave conditions coming out of the northeast, sediment moves westward along the shore and is trapped on the eastern side of both groins. During conditions where we have waves coming out of the west, sediment moves towards the east and accumulates on the western side of the groins. A number of aerial photos, including all of the aerial photos available on the Nantucket GIS server, show that actually quite clearly. So what happens in this system is that during the summer months, when the beach builds back up, a lot of sediment is trapped in and around the groins. This sand then acts to nourish adjacent beaches and to protect the system during the first couple of winter storms, unless we get hit by something catastrophic. But the sand is there and acts to dissipate wave energy and is gradually eroded away during the early winter storms. And by late winter, when all that sand is gone, then the groin and bulkheads are there to provide sort of last-ditch physical protection. Come spring and summer, the sand comes back, you get a much wider beach, you get sand accumulation again. So the groin is there to help support the bulkhead and the way the entire system operates. We looked at a few alternatives, and the main alternatives that we could come up with for work in this area would be to do some sort of offshore reef or breakwater to dissipate wave energy before it hits this section of shoreline. Unfortunately, this is a relatively narrow property. In order to effectively construct a breakwater or offshore reef, it would have to extend laterally hundreds of feet to either side. In order to be effective, it would extend onto properties that are outside of our control. And as per the DMF review letter, they stated that any expansion of the project, structural footprint or nourishment footprint, would be an adverse impact to existing shellfish habitat, and they were not supportive of expanding the project in any way. We also looked at the possibility of a beach nourishment project, and again, to construct a beach that would be sufficiently wide in this area to provide protection for the shoreline, it would have to extend laterally hundreds of feet onto those properties we can't control, and would remove existing shellfish habitat by turning it into beach. The third option we looked at was some sort of living shoreline marsh, or planted fiber roll array fronting the bulkhead. And because during significant portions of the winter, the bulkhead and groins interact directly with waves, we would need to, prior to establishing any kind of living shoreline, we'd have to first build out a beach in front of this bulkhead and groins, which would require us to do either a beach nourishment or a breakwater. So it would be hard to establish the type of conditions in front of this structure that would allow for a living shoreline. Sorry about that. And that's basically what we had in terms of addressing the existing conditions of the groin, potential alternatives. We also took a look at the approval history for work on this site, and the commission has issued 3 orders and 3 certs of compliance for work on the groins and the bulkhead in terms of repair, maintenance, and in one case, relocation of the western groin so that it would match back up with the bulkhead. So work on this system has been approved multiple times by the commission since the 1990s, and most recently in 2009 when the western groin was moved landward. I will be, if Mr. Bailey wants to add anything in terms of prior approvals or grandfathering, he can do that probably better than I can, or otherwise I'd be happy to answer any additional questions.
Dan Bailey, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I just want to add, I was actually involved with this one back in 2009, as was Dan Malloy, and we understand it presents some challenges for the commission, but from a legal perspective, this one, in my view, is pretty clear. It's a grandfathered structure. I think they have the legal right to go out and just do it. That's not how people do things, at least not responsible people, because the commission should have the opportunity to review these things and make sure that what is being proposed as replacement is the same as what was damaged. So that's why we're here. But under your own regs, under the state regs, and under different programs, we have the right, and in some cases the obligation, to repair this. What is proposed for repair is identical to what was there, and we would hopefully the commission will see it that way and will approve this repair. Thanks.
Thank you. If you guys are through with your presentation, I'll open it up for questions and comments. I do want to say I appreciate the information you submitted, with the historical photos, just again documenting that this was kept up all those years. Mark, I saw your hand up.
Yes, thank you. My question is this: this part of Nantucket has changed dramatically over the years, and there's no question that it was easy access for the public for many, many years, and your photographs going back several years, which I saw recently, show that. But now that's changed, and I'm wondering how can the public fish, fowl, and navigate along that property if they can't go in front of it, and that anything above half tide, you're in knee deep or deeper water with waves crashing on you. And how do you reconcile that lack of public access with this application?
Thank you, Mark. Who would like to take that one?
I can start on that. It is very much a seasonal phenomenon, I believe. I went back. Well, we'll share some photos. I went back and looked through the Nantucket GIS photos, available on the Nantucket GIS site. I don't have the ability to screen share that. I don't know if one of my colleagues can do that, either Dan or Dan.
I can't.
Just 1 second, Mark, if I may. I think the photographs are helpful, but that's old news. The new news is sea levels has come up a little bit for sure, and the sand has accreted on both sides of it and created a peninsula, and you can't get by it now at anything above half tide. And I don't see how you can get around that with denying the public normal access to that, walking along that beach. So old photographs don't help.
Well, the photographs are as recent as 2019, which is pretty close. It's the most recent available aerials, and it shows in spring, summer conditions that it is passable at certain times of the tide. Conditions along this section of shoreline, actually remarkably, if you look at the position of the coastal bank itself, have changed surprisingly little compared to other parts of the Nantucket shoreline. What we really have is an area where the beach changes seasonally very significantly. I've been out there in summer where you can walk out almost, at low tide, you can walk out about 100 feet offshore, 150 feet offshore, and not get your knees wet. And I've been there at times when the waves are breaking over the top of the bulkhead. It really varies seasonally. In the mid to late summer, there's usually a very wide beach. There's a huge accumulation of sand that comes in on the west side. It goes beyond, very often beyond the western groin, and fills in the area between the two groins, and there is often an accumulation of sand on the eastern side. That said, if access has really changed to the point where it is so significantly limited the other times of year, access has to be access over bulkheads and groins often is provided by stairway access. And if that's if conditions have changed to the point where that's necessary, we could add a stairway at either end, which would allow pedestrian access across this portion of shoreline from east to west or the other way.
Thank you for offering that, Mark. I think that would be important at this site. I know we had that, I can't remember if it's east or west, but a recent bulkhead replacement, they had to put an easement over, because this location, I know over the years when they ran the rock run, which has now stopped, this is where people had to try and jump over that bulkhead in the water to run around that portion of the island. So I know it's very difficult to pass, on many tides throughout the year. So I think definitely that pedestrian access will be important. Dan Malloy.
Just one little piece to that, just to reiterate kind of what Mark is saying. I can vouch for numerous occasions witnessing the general public is also traversing across the top of the bulkhead. What I've seen numerous occasions is people actually on the flanks of the bulkhead on both ends where the bank slopes down. You can actually, people are coming up quite a bit, walking up around the corners, up on top of the bulkhead, across, and then back down the other side. And I've been out there quite a few times where I've seen the public doing that. I've seen the footprints of people, walking their dogs up and over it on numerous occasions. So it may not be ideal, but I do know that it is occurring.
Okay, they must be very spry, because I don't even think I would try and scamper up there. It's quite dangerous looking. Ian, I see your hand up.
You do, Madam Chair, and thank you. And Dan, sadly, as I hit my mid-70s with knees that weren't what they used to be, there's absolutely no way that I could scramble up there. And, it occurred to me that, well, let me take this one step at a time. So if I may, Madam Chair, through you to Mr. Bailey. So, Mr. Bailey, good afternoon.
Hi.
Is the license 3242, which, thank you for including it, that is still the governing license?
It is.
Okay, thank you. So on page 2, it says the structures authorized hereby should be limited to the following uses: shoreline stabilization for the protection of existing structures. So let me see, as I try to keep my paperwork in order. So on page 3 of your application 2 weeks ago, initially, it says in 2004 that the existing structure there was demolished. So this license doesn't say for the protection of existing structures and structures that will be built here in future. So my first question is, how does the license remain valid? And I'm sure you're going to tell me how it is, but Jeff, I'd like to ask town council, how come this is still a valid permit when the structure that it was protecting is no longer there? So then on page 3, standard waterway license conditions, condition number 9 states, in accordance with the public easement that exists by law on private tidelands, The licensee shall allow the public to use and to pass freely upon the area of the subject property lying between the high and low water marks for the purposes of fishing, fouling, navigation, and the natural derivations thereof. No restriction on the exercise of such public rights within the intertidal area shall be imposed unless otherwise expressly provided in this license. So I was out there at 3 o'clock this afternoon, low tide, and basically there was about a foot of beach at low tide. So, and you know, it's full moon is in 4 days. So I don't know what it would look like with a new moon, but that would seem to me that by definition, it's a huge restriction sticking out. And then it says in condition number 10, unless otherwise expressly provided by this license, the licensee shall not limit the hours of availability of any areas of the subject property designated for public passage. Mumble, designated for public passage, excuse me. Nor place any gates, fences, or other structures on such areas in a manner that would impede or discourage the free flow of pedestrian movement thereon. So it says nothing about winter conditions, summer conditions. It implies that every day of the year, you should be able to pass freely between low and high tide. And then I thought to myself, well, here I am, you know, looking at knee replacement. What happens if it goes wrong and I end up in a wheelchair? I've spent my life going along the beaches. I'd like to go in a wide tire wheelchair along there. And, you know, so then I asked myself, under the Americans with Disabilities Act, what happens if you're in a wheelchair? How do you get over that? So, I basically feel that this current application is unacceptable from my perspective. And it says nothing. License condition number 6 says nothing in this waterways license shall be construed or authorized as authorizing encroachment in, on, or over property not owned or controlled by the licensee, except with the written consent of the owner or owners thereof. So, and I suppose, all right, thank you for listening to me. And thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Ian. Mr. Bailey?
Let me take it a little bit in reverse order and start with the conditions in the Chapter 91 license. And what I'll point out is, you know, Ian is absolutely right about the public access requirements. These are standard Chapter 91 license requirements for waterfront properties. But what it says is no restriction on, this is number 9, no restriction on the exercise of such public rights within the intertidal area shall be imposed unless otherwise expressly provided by this license. And then if you look at the license plan that was authorized back in 1992, it's showing 3 groins extending out between mean high water and mean low water. So the license authorizes these groins that at times restrict the ability of the public to pass and repass. So it's completely in accordance with the requirements of the license. And in fact, you know, when we redid this back in 2009, one of the things that the Mr. Lehrman agreed to was to remove one of those groins to help facilitate public passage. I think the suggestion that's been made about stairways is a good one and much safer than people clamoring around the ends of it. I know that's, if this were going before DEP today for a license, that's probably what DEP would ask for, would be stairways on either side. The other comment is, I mean, yeah, this is a license that authorizes the owner to maintain timber bulkhead with stairs and 3 timber groins. it doesn't say, and Ian, maybe I'm missing it, but it doesn't say structures authorized hereby shall be limited to the following: shoreline stabilization for the protection of existing structures. That doesn't prohibit you from repairing or replacing the existing structure. That's commonly done with these Chapter 91 licenses, because the Chapter 91 license is for the work below mean high.
So thank you, Mr. Bailey. So I grant you that that could be open to interpretation. And looking at the original plan, it shows, I mean, as though we needed to be reminded, it shows that the groins go to the mean low water mark. Well, currently the mean low water mark, there would be no groins. In other words, when it was initially approved, as per the plan, the mean high water was considerably below where mean low water is today. So that's how much it's changed. So if we were adhering strictly to the plan, there would be no surely no rationale to putting groins there at all at this point.
Well, respectfully, I disagree. We've already heard today, and this is well known to the commission. Sea level is going to rise. There's, constant accretion and erosion, and you can't very well authorize, when you're issuing a permit, you can't very well say, well, you can put this structure into the low water mark, but if the low water mark changes, you have to change the structure. That doesn't make any sense. So, we have to live with rising, falling sea levels along the water. And that's one of the things you folks grapple with at every single meeting. I understand that. But, it's a structure that's duly authorized under state law, and, it is allowed to remain and be rebuilt.
Thank you, Mr. Bailey. I think in the future, actually, regulations will be written so that structures have to come back in with changing seas and changing conditions, because we know that it's very dynamic, but they weren't thinking that in the 90s.
I think you're probably, we're seeing some of that, in certainly in Boston. So yeah, it's something that's going to happen, but it hasn't happened yet.
Linda, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I think Dan got to me before. I was going to ask that question in that decision. It doesn't say whether mean high water and low tide are 10 feet from shore or 20 feet from shore. If it said that, we'd have an argument here. Maybe I'm being simplistic, but I don't see how we can say that he can't do what they're applying for, given the way the language is written. I do agree that because of sea level rise and dramatic changes in climate, that may have to go the way that that Dan said, the beginning to do in Boston, where the whole, where the water meets the shore has completely changed. But right now we're stuck with way it reads. We're stuck with the way the regulations read. So I don't really have an issue with this. I just wanted to say that.
Thank you, Linda. Ian?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I certainly I don't want to drive, I don't want to repeat myself, except to say, but in reply to Linda's observation, but specifically I was referring, and part of my concern about this application, to the original drawing upon which this Chapter 91 license was predicated. And in that plot plan, it shows clearly that the mean high water is significantly below the bulkhead that exists today. And so at that point in 1992, the conditions that were attached to this were met, that the public could freely pass between the mean high water mark and the mean low water mark. They cannot do that today. And so thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Ian. So I guess I'd like to ask, I know, Mark, you said that the property owner might be amenable to a stair set over, because I do understand, this is a difficult property. And a lot of the language you used was like the bulkhead protecting structures or property. And in this case, the bulkhead in itself is what is protectable because it's the old pre-78 structure. So in fact, it's not really there to protect the shoreline behind it. Like we can't justify that piece, if that makes sense, because the property isn't allowed to do that now. Like they wouldn't be allowed to put this structure. But would you guys allow a stair set over so that the public can pass?
Yes, I think we would be happy to put in a set of stairs. There is a building on the property which was a repaired, rebuilt building that had been there previously that is protected by the bulkhead. It is protecting a structure. At the time that the bulkhead was reconstructed and the structure was rebuilt and repaired, that was prior to when your regulations had the what is it, that I forget, the 20% or whatever the percentage is of improvement to a structure. So it was at the time an existing structure that was there, that was being protected, that was subsequently rebuilt in place. There was a cottage on that portion of the property behind the bulkhead.
I thought when we talked about this last week, none of the structures were pre-78. Did I make that up in my head?
Well, it was reconstructed in place, so it is a rebuild repair of an older structure that was there. I believe it was expanded beyond what your current regulations, that minimum threshold of living space expansion in your current regulations, but there was an existing pre-78 structure there that was being protected by the original bulkhead and groins when they were built, and that structure was subsequently updated and rebuilt since the 70s.
Okay, I guess I'll have to go back and watch the video from the last meeting because I thought we talked about the structures not being protectable specifically on this property, and you were in agreement with that.
They're not protectable under. You couldn't build a bulkhead for that new structure now because the structure was rebuilt since 1978. But at the time that everything was built and licensed, there was a structure there, and it has since been modified and repaired and rebuilt.
Right, but it's not, it doesn't have statutory protection, essentially. Ian?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So I have the NHA aerials from 1975 that show no bulkhead there at all. And in fact, on the timeline that Mark has presented to us, the bulkhead wasn't there until 1992, long after the cutoff date of 78. And I would argue that, the permit, which I'm happy to go and pull from 2004, but once you've demolished an existing cottage, which is exactly what they've written here, then you no longer have a pre-78 structure. And so it's not entitled to statutory protection. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bailey?
I'd just like to respond to that. As Mark said, we couldn't build a bulkhead there today, but we have one, and it's been authorized by this commission. It's been authorized by the DEP, and it's grandfathered under your rules. It's the bulkhead that is, we're seeking to repair. It's not the structure. The structure has been there, and whenever, for whatever reason, this was approved, and all we're doing is making a repair in accordance with an existing order of conditions. This is a dangerous path. If this groin was half destroyed, you'd be on my client to fix it. You know, you want to be careful about not allowing repairs, because there are some people that then will decide not to repair things. So, you know, we urge you to approve this request. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. So, Mr. Bailey, thank you for that point. And, you know, some of the language in your letter was, I thought, a little bit more threatening than maybe it needed to be. These are, I think, important questions for conservation commissions to ask in the face of sea level rise, and we're asking those questions. I don't think that anybody has sat there and said, we're not going to approve this. I've said a few times, I understand that the structure's grandfathered, but again, I think they're very important questions for coastal properties, you know, and I'm sorry that you feel like we're running you through the ringer, but again, you know, we asked for evidence that it was maintained, you provided that, you know, so this is, I think, appropriate, again, for us to ask these questions. If we weren't, we wouldn't be doing, you know, our job.
And I apologize, you know, also trying to do my job, so.
So Linda, I see your hand up, and then Ian, I see yours.
Just to clarify, the original structure was still there in 1998. It was removed, or part of it was removed, because the new structure is on the exact same footprint. It could very well be on the same foundation, if not the same first floor. So I just wanted to clarify that. It's still down towards the water. It's still in the same location today as it was previous. It was replaced, I think, in the early 2000s, or rebuilt in the early 2000s on the same footprint.
Thank you, Linda. Ian?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I have to say that I've never felt threatened by Mr. Bailey, but perhaps I have a thicker skin than some. But, you know, and without sounding like the Supreme Court and talking about original intent, I mean, the fact is, I assume the Groins were there initially to gather sand and of course, initially they were extended halfway between the mean high water mark and the mean low water mark. And of course, that isn't their function today. So there is no sand to gather at that point. So, but I feel I've said more than enough, and thank you for your indulgence.
Thank you, Ian. Any other questions or comments from commissioners? Maureen?
Thank you, Madam Chair. First, I have a comment, I think, to make to Mr. Bailey. You began your comments with a statement that, in your view, a grandfathered structure wouldn't even need an NOI. It's there, you can replace it. I mean, not replace it, you can repair it and maintain it. And replace it as is. And this was not, you did not believe that you would need to come to the Concom for any kind of permission or let's see, oversight of any kind. Did you mean to go that far, that any grandfathered structure can be dealt with as the owner chooses without even notice to the Concom?
Well,
because I kind of think that goes pretty far, so.
Well, I mean, the rule says that the use and normal maintenance of any structure or alteration of land may be continued. Okay, we're maintaining this structure that got blown out. Do I think it's a prudent thing to come to the Conservation Commission? Absolutely. Because you're going to want to condition the work. I think the scope of your authority is limited to determining whether the extension, whether the repair is not any extension or modification of what was there originally. But it's certainly good practice to come to a commission, and it'd be kind of foolish not to come to the commission, because if you went out there on a project like this, and you know, this is a judgment thing, a small project where you're doing, you know, maybe some stone replacement or something like that. No, that somebody might call, I mean, I think the way that usually gets handled, somebody calls Jeff, tells them that they're going to be out there doing this work, and he says that's fine. But something like this, the commission certainly has an interest in regulating it. But as you know, if I was arguing this to a judge, I would be saying we really don't have to go back in. But I'm not, and I was told a long time ago that if you're going to argue law to a, then you do it to a judge. When you're dealing with commissions and boards, you explain why this project is in the best interest of the community, the owner, and all of the different interests that apply.
May I respond, Madam Chair?
Go ahead, Maureen.
Okay, thanks. I think that this construction is clearly within our jurisdiction, and this structure was originally given permission pursuant to our rules and regulations. And the fact that it is grandfathered, I do not see how that impacts or lessens the necessity of continuing to involve the Concom to, number one, make sure it is in fact no extension. And secondly, to make sure that there is in fact proper maintenance, et cetera, being done. So I really, for the record, I want to go on record saying that I completely disagree with your legal argument that grandfathering means no NOIs, no nothing, and people can just go out and do whatever they choose, and maybe we see them and maybe they don't. So I think that's very important to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Maureen. With all this conversation, it's making me think about our regulations, and we really need a tight definition of maintenance versus repair and replacing, because I think that's important. I think in many people's minds, maintenance is banging a few nails, maybe replacing a timber versus, repairing an entire piece of a structure that was destroyed. So I think that's where this kind of falls. Any further questions or comments from commissioners? Ian?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So reading from the Massachusetts Disabilities Act, and under the Equality Act of 2010, public buildings are required under the Equality Act 2010, which incorporates the Disabilities Discrimination Act, to provide access for people with disabilities. Building regulations also require all new builds to be fully and easily accessible to everyone who needs to use them. And I would argue that the same applies, I'm not sure about the case law, but the same applies to where the public has an absolute right to access along the beach there. And I don't know what to say, Dan, but I may be in a wheelchair in a couple of years, and I want to be able to get through there high or low tide. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Ian. Mr. Bailey?
Just real quickly, well, Ian, I hope you're not in a wheelchair. I hear what you're saying, which is there are certain public rights there, and with our public rights there, the ADA can't apply, because generally the ADA does not apply to private property. I'm not aware of any situation where DEP Chapter 91 has tried to impose ADA requirements to waterfront lateral access. And I think, because of the challenges that we've been talking about with rising shoreline and shifting sands and all that type of thing, it would just be a very difficult thing to do. That's all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mark?
Yes, thank you. I'm not sure who this should be addressed to, but I'm looking at the plan of the new groin going out to the north, and it's 30 feet long. And as conditions have changed dramatically along that shoreline, that's going to be sticking out into the Atlantic Ocean. And you say a dead low tide is knee deep out there, but there's low tide is not, it's every 6 hours. So a 30-foot barrier out there, I think it's going to be in the way. And as conditions have changed, I think maybe we should consider having it be a shorter groin rather than the full 30 feet. I don't know, does the original permit call for the low water mark or the high water mark? I'm not sure of that. But
I don't have it in front of me. Mark Ritz?
I mean, the original permit approved a groin of that size. It didn't specifically call out high and low water were shown on the plan, but high and low water were based on whatever the conditions were the day survey was done out there. And, they were not an average annual. It was just, when we were out there to survey, that was what the conditions were that day. The groin was approved for a 30-foot length and was constructed to a 30-foot length. It wasn't calculated based on proximity to a changing mean or low high.
Thank you. Mark?
Just a follow-up. I mean, it goes along with my thoughts on the public access. If it's going out 30 feet and it's a wash at all tides, as it will be now if we allow this construction to go ahead, it means that you cannot walk around it at even low tide without getting your feet wet. And I think that's probably not in keeping with public access along our waterfront. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mark. Dan and Mark Ritz, do you have a reply?
I'll make it quick so we're not just talking about this point all night. But a couple of things to keep in mind with the mean high and mean low water. So first off, the Chapter 91 plans clearly distinguish where that zone is. And they indicate, and it's still relatively true today, that mean high water would roughly touch the bottom of the bulkhead, and mean low water would be below and beyond the limit of the groin. And one thing I want to remember when looking at this, if you're seeing a high tide, that's higher typically than a mean high water. It gets very confusing when you're looking at all these definitions of what is a high tide or mean high tide or mean low. It's very different the way the regulations are written, the way the permit is written versus what you might see. And you're looking at about a 3-foot plus or minus change in water elevations during the tide cycles, at least. And I can certainly say as a fact that I've been out there numerous times on low tide, and I have walked around those groins. There could be a high tide, you can't. There could be a storm that brings in more sand where you can do it today and next week you can't. But it was certainly contemplated in the permit. It's shown on the plans that way. And we have certainly seen it ourselves that it is physically accessible because I've done it. I mean, I'm not saying you can do it at high tide, but at low tide, I've absolutely walked around those groins on sand.
Thank you, Mr. Malloy. Mark Ritz, did you have a reply as well? I saw your hand go up. I can't speak to it.
Yeah, what I was going to say is that, we would be willing to provide stairway access across this, and there are numerous times when in fact there is more sand there and it is accessible, but we are willing to provide stairway access at both ends to allow people up onto the bulkhead so that they can cross over and get past and then come down on the other side.
Thank you. I think we really appreciate that, and I know the public does as well. Ian? Oh, you're
Thank you,
muted.
Madam Chair. And, I think I'd just like to hear Dan. I'd like you to state what seems obvious in the plan before me, that when this initial Chapter 91 license was granted, the groins went midway between the mean low water and the mean high water mark. That's the way it looks to me.
Yes, that appears correct with the plan showing.
Thank you. So I guess this is a question for Jeff, Madam Chair, through you.
Yeah.
So at what point, when they're talking, requesting a 30-foot groin, at what point does that become part of land under the ocean? So in other words, at what point is it basically a completely different ballgame? Because in fact, it's no longer on a beach the way that the initial permit was provided. The original, Chapter 91 license is clearly not for land under the ocean. And if you're extending a groin into where it's clearly on land under the ocean, how can that possibly be covered by the same Chapter 91 license? Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. Jeff, go ahead.
So I think Ian directed to me. I'll try my best to answer as I can. I think one of the important things to remember with this is, I totally hear the questions about Chapter 91 and its relevance. Unfortunately, Chapter 91 is not within the jurisdiction of the commission. So how they determine whether things qualify or are disqualified, or whether their license is still valid or not valid or in compliance, isn't necessarily for the commission to determine relevant to Chapter 91. I mean, I know they're linked. I know they're kind of together. The site's confusing like that, but the requirements of that license and whether or not it still meets those requirements is unfortunately something that, Waterways and Mass DEP has to be the determining factor with. I mean, we can certainly send information to them and ask them to look into it. Or if we feel there's an issue of compliance, to let them know, and they can take whatever action they deem appropriate. Unfortunately, the commission doesn't have the jurisdictional authority to enforce that license. So I think that's that. I mean, I appreciate that, obviously with our bylaw and our interest with coastal beach and coastal bank and things, recreations and interest within our local regulations, that I think is what Chapter 91 is trying to address and where we're getting at. So I think the conversation's valid. I mean, it's always tricky, right? The resource area has changed, and there is case law that exists that is relevant to grandfathering uses and resource area changes being an important determining factor on whether or not that grandfathered use is still actually a grandfathered use. I mean, I know we've seen that locally here. I think before I feel comfortable saying that we should be applying that same standard here, I definitely think that, asking our council would be something smart if that's germane to this situation. So I guess my answer for Ian is that I'm not 100% sure about your question right at the moment. I'm not sure I have armed with the information to answer that.
Well, thank you, Jeff. I always appreciate your advice.
Oh, this is a tricky one. I don't think anyone's there. I mean, we see, I think one of the things that's hindering us a little bit here is, our local regulations talk about rebuilt, and repair is, what's the difference between rebuilt and repair, and, what's the standard that can be upheld for that? I mean, I think that's a big question. And, I think depending upon who's looking at this case specifically, is the structure the bulkhead with two groins, or are there three separate structures that make up the entirety of the whole? I mean, I think that's part of the debate that you guys are having.
Thank you.
I wish I had better answers. Sorry. This is not as straightforward as it would seem to be sometimes.
A tough one. Any other questions or comments from commissioners before I open it up to the public? Looks like no, so we'll open this one up for the public. 18 Washing Pond. RJ?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, Jeff's right. This has been an interesting one. So first, thinking about a bulkhead and groin structure, it's a lot like a septic system or anything like that. It helps the home or the structure to function properly on the property. So if it is true that none of the structures that were there when this was originally permitted are there, would the powers that be really be maintaining a bulkhead or a groin and rebuilding it for the sake of having a bulkhead or a groin? That's a really interesting legal question that the commission should look into, because more and more of these properties are going to have those structures replaced with things that are not pre-1978. And essentially under the bylaw currently, at least, that those post-78 structures, legally, it's almost as if they don't exist when we're talking about a coastal engineering structure. They're just not eligible for that protection. So we're talking about a bulkhead or a groin that's going to be replaced in this case that is protecting nothing. And it's extending down into the public trust, which brings me to my second point, which I'm here on behalf of the Land Council, but the second point is more me just as a member of the public and as a surf caster. One of these times, a fisherman or woman is going to be trying to scramble up over one of these structures and waders, and wind or wave is going to knock them down and someone is going to drown. So every chance the commission gets to get some public access safely over these that doesn't involve scrambling with wet boots is a huge opportunity to try to avoid that. So thank you.
Thank you, RJ. Again, I think the public access point is very important, and it sounds like they would be willing to provide stairway access. So again, I think that's a big benefit here. I think, all right, let me just navigate screens. So we have a public comment from Burton Balkind. He says there have been nesting plovers within 100 feet of the proposed repair, and any work should be conditioned to protect nesting shorebirds. And I think we would have those time of year restrictions, you know, written into any permit, any reconstruction. Jeff?
Yeah, we've been adding for any kind of coastal project of this nature, that time of year restriction kind of from April 15th through September 30th, with some relief available if you're using a qualified shorebird monitor to inspect sites and determine whether there are birds' presence or absence. But that's a pretty standard condition we see in projects of this nature.
Thank you, Jeff. And I don't believe we have any other public comment. So commissioners, are we wanting opinion from town council on this one? I know me personally, although I would like to see a different structure go in, I think I understand, unfortunately, that the structure itself is grandfathered, and the addition of stairs for public access, you know, I do see very, very valuable in this case. But again, I'd like to hear from you guys. Maureen?
I think the thing, and I appreciate that RJ mentioned it because I had meant to mention it as well. What we have here is a structure that let's assume it's legal, and they can do what they've asked for in this application. But as it was permitted to remain as a coastal engineering structure so that something could be protected, something that was eligible to be protected could be protected. So there's no longer anything that's eligible to be protected. So what I am struggling with is it seems kind of like Alice in Wonderland to say that, okay, this thing is sitting there, it's been grandfathered, the purpose of grandfathering it was to protect the house that was grandfathered. That house is no longer grandfathered. So I think one could certainly make a decent argument that this no longer serves any purpose. And would the, because if you buy the argument that this structure gets to stay no matter what else happens, I don't think that anyone who looked at when things should be grandfathered and the protections and all, I do not think anyone ever anticipated that you would wind up protecting the protective structure when there was no longer anything to protect. This is all so that a pre-78 house can be protected. And so this is, and I'm not sure, I mean, I think this is but this is a very sticky question. And I don't think there's any case law on it. I mean, I'm not, you know, I've never heard of any case law on it. And, but I just have this sense that this is really, you know, very bass-backward in terms of how we are looking at this, in that it's not protecting anything anymore. Why is it there? Why should anybody, you know, why should we allow for it to be continued, even though it does nothing but hamper public access? And also, it's not just access to the beach, it's also fishing access. I mean, you've got these groins now sitting out. If you wanted to come closer to the shore, that would be pretty hard to do as well. I don't know. I don't know. And I don't know if this is something we can handle in our own regs as well. And I'm sorry to throw this out, because it's a big, I think it's a very, very significant question. And but I don't know that town council is going to be able to give us an answer on it. I don't know. I mean, this is, it's out there, but I think it's very important. So I know that doesn't help anybody, but it really bothers me about this. What is it protecting? Nothing. So.
Thank you, Maureen. Ian, I'll go to you, and then Mark, I saw your hand up.
Thank you, Ashley. And so I think you've put that very well, Maureen. That's exactly how I look at it. And to project this out to the license of 99 years. So it was built in 1992. So in 2091, by the argument that it can stand there no matter what, I ask everyone to imagine what that shoreline will look like in 2091. That will be sticking out like a middle finger from the hand of the beach, you know, maybe half a mile out into the sound. And I don't think any of us are, well, so I would actually like not only an opinion from town council, I would like him to look at it to prepare a legal argument for why we should deny this. And if I may make one more point, I certainly am very pleased that the applicants are putting in what I would consider to be the least thing that they should do, which is stairways. Because when I was out there at 3 o'clock this afternoon, there's no way that I could have got over the existing groin on the west side of the property. You know, it makes it completely impenetrable for an elderly gentleman like myself. I hope you don't mind me calling myself a gentleman rather than an oik. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. Mark?
Yes, thank you. Actually, I would support the move of Maureen and Ian to ask council on the issue of pre-78 protection, and if that's gone, are we protecting the bulkhead for no apparent reason? I think that's a worthy question for our council, and I would support delaying this application until we have that opinion. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mark. So, with the request, I guess, of the majority of commissioners to have a town council opinion, Mark Ritz, Dan Bailey, Dan Malloy, what would you guys like to do here? Would you like to try and close, or would you like to continue for 2 weeks?
Can I ask, is there anything else the commission's looking for in terms of information from us? We've heard the question from town council, obviously, but is there something we need to provide you?
Well, if you are agreeing to do stairs, I guess if you could do a little sketch of those before the next, meeting, how that would work on this property might be nice to have before we close. I don't know if there's any other information commissioners are looking for.
Well, if I may, Madam Chair, I'd like a solid engineering drawing with an absolutely laid out how it's, what it's going to look like. I mean, not just a sketch. I can give you a sketch. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Ian. I know that Mark and Dan wouldn't provide us with just a sketch, so
Nothing on a napkin.
yeah. But I think that's basically it.
I think we would like to continue for 2 weeks to be able to provide that and to give the commission an opportunity to seek the opinion from town council if that's their wish.
Okay. Well, then this will continue until May 26th, and I really appreciate your participation in this conversation. I know it probably seems drawn out to you guys, but again, it's important for us to go through, and we don't see a lot of situations like yours.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So that will move us on to the Carol W. Dean Revocable Trust at 48 West Comet Road, represented by Paul Santos.
Thank you. On behalf of the applicant, Paul Santos, this is a continuation of a notice of intent that was before you at the last meeting for the installation of a set of aluminum seasonal beach stairs. The intent would be that these would go in and out on a seasonal basis. It's a single length of stairs, approximately 15 linear feet. We did not have a response from NHESP at last meeting, and Ian had asked for a detail to show what the stairs would look like. That is on the plan that you see before you. Stairway is shown on the plan section, and there's a small detail to the left, which depicts the standard set of aluminum beach stairs. There's no platforms, no boardwalks or anything like that proposed. It's simply a set of beach stairs, aluminum beach stairs that would go in. We did receive a response from NHESP. It was that in order to issue a prohibited take, they acknowledged that this was an area in which there is indication of plovers, and that they conditioned their permit or their determination on the fact that the standard dates, provisions for nesting and things like that would be adhered to, so that no areas of nesting plovers would be affected during the time in removal of installation of these stairs. So what we would obviously propose on that would be, I guess, your standard conditions that the area would need to be reviewed by an appropriate professional to make sure that the installation and removal of the stairs do not cause any particular problems. That's the extent of the application. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. This is a new notice of intent. We did have our DEP file number, so we do have everything on our end with regard to what we need to potentially close the meeting.
Thank you, Paul. Ian, I see your hand up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, thank you, Paul, for putting in the cross-section of the stairs.
You're welcome.
Any other questions or comments? Looks like no, so we'll just open it up and see if there's any public comment on 48 West Comet Road. It does not appear that we have public comment. Jeff, I'm assuming we have everything we need to close. If we don't,
Good to go.
we're good to go. Okay. So Paul, would you like to close?
Yes, I would, please.
Is there a motion to close?
So move.
Motion made by Maureen. Is there a second? Seconded by Mark. So by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Arisman, aye. Golding,
Aye.
Phillips,
Aye.
Williams.
Aye.
Right, that carries unanimously. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
And that moves us on to Pac Rim Realty Trust at 196 Hummock Pond Road, represented by David Haynes. Oh, you're muted.
Good evening again. This is a notice of intent to construct a house garage with a second floor and a swimming pool in the buffer zone to a, well, you know what? I'm not sure it is a bordering vegetated wetland, but we've called it that all along, so we will from now on. This wetland was delineated and reviewed by the commission in a determination last fall. So the wetland boundary is locked in. The plan shows, if we could see the plan, that would be great. They're building everything in the front part of the lot. The lot extends way back. There's a lot more upland back there, and there's a lot more wetland in the rear of the property. But they would like to build in the front, so they've shoehorned everything in. There is a septic system proposed outside of the 100-foot buffer zone that is yet to be designed based on what you say here. But we are going down to, right in this area, we're going down to the 25, grading it back. We're using some retaining walls, going in with a house and a garage with a second floor secondary dwelling, a driveway. There's a narrow portion of lawn in the rear of the property. There's a swimming pool. We're using retaining walls to bring the grade up a little bit on the property and to maintain a 2-foot separation to the water table for all structures. We are not asking for any waivers from the commission. The more than 50% of the 25 to 50 will be maintained in its natural state. 2-foot groundwater separation will be maintained. No dewatering. The swimming pool, we use a canister type filtration system, so there will be no discharge. No water will discharge into the buffer zone of this wetland. There is a minor indiscrepancy on the plan. The silt fence cuts across the grades at the back. It just needs to be brought down and go along the 16-foot contour. But other than that, it meets the regulations. Obviously, I did put in there a provision for fertilizer, but after the town meeting, I guess we don't have to talk about that anymore. No fertilizer will be used by town regulation. With that, that's basically our application. There are, you'll notice on there was a series of test pits that were done by Jeff Blackwell to find out where the water table is. Very hydrogeologically, it's a very interesting area because there's a big wetland right there, and it's all, I mean, there's one to the rear of the property that's it's a very marsh, wet meadow, no, it's shallow fresh marsh, high water table, and indicates a high water table. But these test pits that were done found that the water, there's a silt layer underneath that wetland that comes across and it comes towards the road, but it peters out, and all of a sudden the water table just falls right off in there. Just a hydrogeologist's interest. So the interest of the geology of this island is fascinating. But with that, that's my presentation. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you, David. Are there any questions or comments from commissioners? Ian?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So David, I'm sure if Seth was here, he would be asking you, what was going to be planted and be looking for an actual plan for the garden they're going to put in. Well, maybe I shouldn't say Seth would be, I'm asking. So thank you. I like the tie, incidentally. It looks pretty interesting.
Maureen, how do you like it? Like this one?
I love it, David.
We have specified drought tolerant grasses to be planted back there, so there wouldn't be any necessity to irrigate. Obviously, anything within 50 would have to be indigenous. There isn't a whole lot of garden proposed back there. It's mostly just a lawn strip.
Well, could we condition it that there was going to be no garden within the 50?
Or there would be no planting that wasn't indigenous or drought tolerant grasses. That would be completely acceptable.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very important questions, Ian, because when we say drought tolerant too, I think, again, we want to specify native because it's like a beautiful wet meadow back there. And, like the miscanthus, a lot of the grasses that are planted could really get loose back in there. Jeff, I kind of have a question for you about this one, and I think I already know how it's going to go, but I'm going to ask the question anyway. So this property, I think maybe was subdivided, but it's like a gorgeous wet meadow that you can see from the bike path, you can see from everywhere. That's, been visible since I was a young child out in Cisco. And the way this is set up, you lose all view shed to that wetland. And I'm just wondering again about wetland scenic views. I realize that's a dicey one, but the way this is set up, does that have any standing here? Because you are completely isolating like the view from the bike path of, again, what I would consider a very pristine kind of wet meadow.
Wetland scenic views. Wetland scenic views, right? When we talk about that, it's obviously the view from the public way into some wetland area. And I tend to agree with you on this one, where it's a nice wet meadow and things that are there. Unfortunately, unless there's a way to condition it, wetland scenic views is also, it's subjective, and I don't necessarily think it's grounds to prevent a project that meets all of the other performance standards. I think that'd be hard to uphold. I think if there are ways or ways to look at it, and I know this plan's kind of confusing too, with there's lots of orange lines that kind of go together. But I think that, down the sides and a little bit through the middle and down the other side, if there are corridors that are there, I think trying to rely on wetland scenic views to do something would be difficult because there may be some corridors to look back there that still exist. So I think that may be trouble. I'm sure that was probably the answer you expected, but probably not what you necessarily wanted to hear too. So
yeah, no, I mean, that's what I expected, but I just felt it was important to bring up in this case, because then I just wonder, then is the corridor pushed to the neighbor, which in this case is still kind of the property owner, and then they need to leave a remaining corridor? Does that just kind of get pushed to the next person?
Well, I think in this case, and not to do back and forth, I think along the property lines, right, where you have zoning setbacks and things that prevent development in those sides, that's where you get some of those. And then I also, looking at the structures there's a pretty good gap through the middle of the lot where there's not structure that's in the way. And that's what the, zoning setbacks for and building code setbacks for separation between structures is supposedly. accomplishing is to break up those sight lines and do things. And I think when it's all said and done too is, I don't know if David or I know the applicant Jason's on maybe to answer. I'm not sure if they've completed their process at HDC either. So there may be some tweaking and changing that goes with that as well. But I tend to agree with David. I think the project that they're showing meets the other performance standards that are there.
Yeah, no, and I would agree with that. I just, again, wanted to ask this question. Ian, I see your hand up.
Yes, Madam Chair, you do, because, it's like the old saw, I forget which Supreme Court justice who said that every dog knows when it's been kicked on purpose. And the bottom line is everybody knows when a wetland view no longer exists, it's gone. And it is part of our purview. And I don't fully understand, if I may ask through you, to David or to Jason. I'm sorry, Jason, I don't know your last name. Please call me Ian. What is that? Is that a structure by the parking area there, or what is it exactly? That's the 4 hash marks. But
I'd have to see the plan up if you could share that on the screen, what you're speaking of.
I think I'm going to switch plans if it's okay with you guys from the plan that Jeff did that has the lines to the site plan that are on the architectural set you guys provided, because I think it gets a little bit more clear. And I apologize, the pool isn't on this one, but you guys can see the houses without the extra lines. I'll zoom in too.
And Jason,
okay.
Jason, could you just state your last name as well for
Olbreeze, Olbres. Jason Olbreeze.
Thank you.
Yep.
Can everyone see that?
I mean, from my opinion, there are gaps definitely in there, and as Jeff said, the side yard setback is going to be mirrored on the other property. If anything's built over there, that gives you a good corridor right through from the road. There is a corridor between the house and the garage that you can see through, and there is a corridor, even though that's shrubby over on the other side. There isn't a view there now, so because of the shrubs.
So, Madam Chair, may I ask through you, would it be possible to move the garage closer to the house to give a wider corridor?
I don't know what the building setbacks requirements are that would require.
I believe it's 12 feet, if I may, sorry.
Yes.
Between the garage and the main building?
You have to maintain at least 12 feet between the two structures.
Oh, thank you.
Minimum, yep.
And that's what you've got?
16 now. Between
16 now?
Yes, I believe.
So Jason, would you be willing to move it over the 4 feet to give it a little bit wider on the left-hand side of the property?
We might run into issues with HTC. I don't know. I was trying to keep them separate, and maybe we can reduce the width of the garage a little bit.
That would be great if you could consider one of the two. Jeff?
I might suggest if it's easier when you draft an order, you could include a finding that references the wetland scenic views, and that effort should be made to maximize the width of view shed corridors, either by reducing the size of the garage or moving it closer to the building if possible. And then you could include it in any order. And then that way, when they go through HDC, that can be part of their discussion with HDC, or do that they're trying to maximize that space to maximize that view.
Well,
that's a good idea. Thank you, Jeff. Ian?
I think that would be hugely appreciated by the commission if it could be possible. I mean, Yeah.
Jason, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I mean, the circumstances of this law, just to explain it, are pretty, they're restrictive in that we did push a lot of things up towards the front because we didn't want to just, get into near the resources in the back and in the other areas. And we have to leave area for the septic fields up front too. And in the way the wetland resource is shaped, it kind of makes a longer, skinnier house across the lot as opposed to depth. But we wanted to maintain the design out of the 50 foot, which is typical, I think, of the commission likes to see. So, we could have made the house a little deeper, but it just start encroaching on that 50 foot. We're pretty tight to it now. So I just wanted to say that it is a difficult site to get that program in of the garage and house, and leave room for zoning and the separation between the two structures. And when they're too close, they look odd anyways. I know that's not part of your purview, but I know there's a minimum there by zoning code, and also HCC has something to say about that usually too. So anyways, I thought I'd just share that with you. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from commissioners? Okay, looks like no. So would you guys like to continue for 2 weeks to try and redesign or maybe move the garage, or are you holding fast on the current design? David?
Like Jeff's suggestion of putting that in the order of conditions, that we try to do that, and we will make an effort to do that. We still they have to go back to HCC. There may be tweaks in there. We may be back with you in front of you with a minor mod with different house locations, and keeping that in mind and seeing what we can do to increase the view in there. But it would be nice to get a closure tonight, but.
Okay. I also just realized it's one of those days. I didn't open this up for public comment, not that we have a big public, but want to make sure they have the chance. Does not appear that we have any public comment. So Jeff, I'm assuming we have everything we would need to close, as is the applicant's wish.
Yes.
Okay. Is there a motion to close? Motion made by Mark. Ian, do you want the second?
Sure.
Okay, so by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Arisman, aye, Golding,
Aye.
Phillips,
Aye.
Williams.
Aye.
All right, that carries unanimously.
Actually, one procedural question, not about this one, but about my first one with the on Brewster Road. While we were talking, a file number came in that we continued for, but we continued it, so I don't think we can reopen it.
You can at the same meeting.
You can or cannot?
Can.
You can't
Yes,
stop.
yeah, you can reopen it.
You can
You
reopen
never
it.
you didn't really close it. Anyway, it was just continued, so you can go back to it without a lot of fuss.
Okay, yeah, and we didn't have public on commenting about it, so
I'll make a motion to reopen the hearing for that.
It wasn't closed.
Oh, okay, I just know if we had to make a motion to pull it up on the agenda.
No, that's what I was saying. It was never closed, so you don't need a motion.
Yeah, you don't even need a motion to reconsider, would
Yeah,
just be.
no vote on it, that's right.
all right.
Yeah.
Well, as chair, I'll say, yes, we can go back and hear that, and we're good with that without a motion and everything else. So we'll go back to Nicholson at 24 Brewster Road. That's now received a file number.
Move to approve.
Second.
All right, so motion to approve made by Ian, seconded by Linda. So by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Arisman, aye, Golding,
Aye.
Phillips,
Aye.
Williams,
Aye.
So that carries unanimously.
Thank you very much, and sorry for the confusion. It came in at 5:12.
Oh,
Good evening and good weekend.
just in the nick of time. We hope you have a good evening too, David.
Saved by the bell, so to speak, David.
It's true. All right, so that moves us on to amended orders of conditions. We have Phillips trustee at 19 East Tristram Ave, represented by Paul Santos.
Oh, actually, that one was continued, actually. We had asked for that to be continued. Or,
All right, so scratch that. Is it continued until May 26th?
yes, please.
Okay. So Phillips trustee 19 East Tristram's continues till May 26th. That moves us on to minor modifications. We have EPR RGH LLC at 119 Eel Point Road, represented by Paul Santos.
Thank you. This is a minor modification request for the redevelopment of property at 119 Eel Point Road, in which we were before the commission. And we've previously permitted a set of beach stairs and the construction of a pool cabana just inside the 100-foot setback. The main dwelling, the pool, second dwelling, septic system are all outside of Concom jurisdiction. We had also had permitted within your jurisdiction invasives removal and placement of a lawn. And within this request, we're asking to, within that previously permitted area, place a low landscape retaining wall outside the 50-foot setback and a 100-square-foot shed in that area also. All the work outside of the 50, but within the 100-foot jurisdictional zone, but within an area that was previously approved as a lawn area. And that is the extent of the minor modification.
Thank you, Paul. So what is the erosion rate at this property?
This is less than, this one has been before you a number of times. It's less than the required, more than the 50-foot setback, if that's what the.
Yeah, just because it's so close to the 50 that.
Yeah, this is actually, it's fairly stable. It didn't warrant going to 100-foot no build when we did the original. This was originally filed as an RDA to establish the setback lines. And then we came in and did the development component, but it wasn't, I want to, if I have to guess, actually, I think it was less than a few feet per year. It wasn't an area that there's been a lot of erosion, and it didn't trigger the 20 times the rate.
Okay. Thank you for just putting that on the record for me. Any questions or comments from commissioners?
So, yes, please, through you, Madam Chair, to Paul.
Yes, go ahead.
There doesn't seem any obvious reason for it, so I assume it's the aesthetics. How high is it going to be? Do you know?
It's a low retaining wall, Ian. I think it's between 2 to 3 feet. It's more so because the grade changes climbing up from the back area of where the back of the dwelling is to the back side of the home. It's just a way to manipulate less of the grade out there and just transition between the lower section to the back section of the yard.
So would you be happy with us conditioning it that it is now higher than 3 feet?
I would have to check with the landscaper. I don't see that as a problem, Ian, but I wouldn't want to commit to it unless I at least had a chance to talk to the landscaper.
But because at some point, it's going to be quite visible. So,
well, it's not going to be visible from anywhere. You can't see this from the road. You can't see it from the beach. Really the only people that can see this is the homeowner and the two abutters.
Well, if it was 6 feet tall, would it be seen by the beach? But that's my point, Paul. No, I take your point, but as you're walking along the beach, I just think, it would be nice to just put a limit on it so we wouldn't have any mission creep going forward.
Yeah, I would, from that end, I would say less than, should be less than 4 feet. I could be comfortable with that, Ian, because if it's anything that starts to get over 4 feet is considered a structure under the zoning code. And, but I would say less than, if we said less than 4 feet, I'm comfortable with that. It's again, it's a low landscape retaining wall. I know that's what the plan is.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Looks like no. So Jeff, do we have everything we would need to issue the minor mod?
Yes, you do.
Okay. Would somebody like to make a motion to issue the minor mod? Maureen? Maureen got you, and I'll give you the second, Linda.
Canuck.
So by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Arisman, aye. Golding,
Aye.
Phillips,
Aye.
Williams.
Aye.
Right, that carries unanimously. And that moves us on to William and Elizabeth Scannell at 119R Eel Point Road, also represented by Paul Santos.
Thank you. This again is a minor modification and similar to the abutter. This is for a low landscape retaining wall, similar to the one we just spoke about within an area previously approved as a lawn area by the commission. Again, outside the 50, but within the 100-foot setback. Within this area, within this minor modification too, we had previously approved a set of wooden beach stairs. And we are asking for the minor modification to allow the last section of the beach stairs, the 15 to 20-foot section of the beach stairs, to be allowed to be aluminum. So we may be able to do that as a removable, as a seasonal type of removable section of the stairs instead of constructing a set of wooden beach stairs all the way down to the beach. So you would construct the wooden beach stairs to a point, and then the last 20-foot section would be aluminum, and that would be removed on a seasonal basis. That is the extent of this one. Again, low retaining wall, landscape purposes. This one I know for a fact, Ian, was again less than 4 feet, because this one I had a landscape plan for. And then the removable section of the aluminum beach stairs on what was previously approved as a permanent wooden section. Happy to answer you may have.
Any questions or comments from commissioners?
Yeah, so Paul, would that be visible from the beach?
What was that?
I really, going forward.
The wall again you're talking about, Ian?
Yeah, if you're walking, because obviously I'm not talking about looking directly. I'm looking as you're walking down.
No.
I'm just becoming so aware of how many structures there are as you walk down the beach. I mean,
this property had like the not dune field, so it actually goes up. Like
okay.
Goes back down.
Yeah,
Thank
Ian,
you for the reminder. Scratch that from the record, Paul.
Yeah, mean low water is around 1.2, Ian. The top of this bank is around anywhere from 35 to lowest 26. So yeah.
Okay.
Up there. Any other questions or comments? All right. So Jeff, do we have everything we would need to issue the minor mod?
Yes, you do.
Okay. Is there a motion to issue the minor mod? Motion made by Ian, seconded by Linda.
Feeling slightly foolish.
It's hard to remember them all.
Oh, that's fine. I understand what you were trying to get at. So,
so by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Arisman, aye. Golding,
Aye.
Phillips,
Aye.
Williams.
Aye.
All right, that carries unanimously. Thank you, Paul.
thank you, everyone.
And that moves us on to certificates of compliance. We have Loretta Lane Nominee Trust, and Jeff, should we take all these separately, I'm assuming?
If you wanted to do them all together, we can do them all together. They're all kind of tied together loosely.
Okay.
It's on the same properties, so.
Yeah, so we have Loretta Lane Nominee Trust, 3, 5, and 7 Loretta Lane, SE 482735. Then we have 3 and 5 Loretta Lane, SE 483101, and 5 and 7 Loretta Lane at SE 483184.
Sure. So just to run through them, the last one's the most complicated. So the original one, 2735, was just some clearing, and they converted an area of lawn and brush into a meadow area. That work is completed. That meadow is existing and is getting maintained, and is in good order. The second order for the house, 3101, was for the removal of a house and reconstruction of a new house. That work is all completed and was completed in compliance. And the last one, the one that's the most interesting and would point out in your packet, had the required photo report. The last one that was due, for those that remember, that was kind of a salt marsh and ecological restoration project that happened there. That kind of split from a marsh that was being fed on the other side of Loretta Lane through a culvert, and there had been some salt marsh dieback, and some other things that are there, and some invasives that were moved. And we've been kind of watching this one. I was really interested in this one kind of personally because I think it's an interesting project. And I think it's gone really well, and the photo monitoring shows everything's really well vegetated again, and is in good order. The invasives have been removed. And I think it's a project that they really invested the time and effort in it and did a really good job with. So I think we feel comfortable issuing the certificate of compliance on all three of those projects.
Awesome, with no ongoing conditions.
No, we weren't smart in the first two. And then the last one, now that they've kind of finished up that project, outside of their just kind of monitoring that site to make sure no invasives come back, which isn't necessarily part of the order. It's kind of letting nature take over, you know?
Yeah.
So a win for the good guys on this one, I think.
All right. If there aren't any questions, would somebody like to make that motion? Mark, is that you? Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Linda. So by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Arisman, aye. Golding,
Aye.
Phillips,
Aye.
Williams.
Aye.
Right, that carries unanimously. The SP Norwell separately, correct?
No, we can actually do all these together too. And I'll explain what we're doing.
All right, so we have SP Norwell LLC at 1 Mariner Way, SC 482743, 2 Mariner Way, SC 482744, and 4 Mariner Way, SC 482746.
Yes. So these are the ones, if you guys don't remember, I don't remember if it was the last meeting or the meeting before, we issued out new orders of conditions on these projects. These were the undeveloped lots on that Mariner Way subdivision, and they didn't get that work going. So their orders expired and they needed new orders. These are the expired orders that they're just asking us to invalidate because it's now governed by a totally new order, and these don't apply, but they're against the title. So they're just trying to clear them off and just work under the new ones.
Okay, so should the motion be to invalidate all three orders?
Yes.
Okay,
I so move.
all right, so
I
motion,
have to recuse, Madam Chairman, from these. These are my clients.
okay. So motion made by Maureen, is there a second? Seconded by Ian, so by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Arisman, aye. Golding. Oh, you're muted.
Aye. Sorry.
That's all right. Phillips.
Aye.
All right, so that carries with Commissioner Williams recused. And that moves us on to orders of conditions. And Jeff sent these out this afternoon. So hopefully you have them in your inbox. And we will begin with the Linda Loring Nature Foundation at 90, 110, 124, 130, and 136 Eel Point Road.
Yes. Sorry, I'm running a little bit behind. So if you guys remember, we closed this one last time. This was for kind of an ecological restoration project for managing some invasive species. And then they also had a small, I'll call it a bridge going over a ditch Why can't, oh, I'm looking in the wrong spot, that's why. So in their order, I had kind of just included some conditions, specifical, it's not even a word. It's not even that late. Specific to the management of invasive species, kind of our normal set that was in there. And then some monitoring and looking at regrowth for native species. But other than that, I didn't really have a lot of conditions, just to clarify that the invasives are covered by our existing waiver section in the bylaw for that waiver. And then the structure crossing they label it as an intermittent stream on the plan, but crossing from one side of it looked like an old like drainage ditch to the other side, crosses that inland bank. So I included that waiver for that as well.
Thank you, Jeff. Does anybody have any questions or amendments to the order? And if not, would somebody like to make a motion to issue as drafted? Motion made by Linda. Is there a second? Seconded by Maureen. So by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Arisman, aye. Golding,
Aye.
Whoops,
Aye.
Williams.
Aye.
That carries unanimously. And that moves us on to Park City Wind, which is of course offshore in the Muskeget Channel.
All right, so there's a lot to digest in this one. Sorry I didn't get it to you earlier today. So there's a bunch of findings. I kind of used some of the findings from the Vineyard Wood one, and then obviously in reviewing the letters that we got from Natural Heritage and Division of Marine Fisheries, have some comments specific to things. I won't read them all specifically, but like number 8, that the commission finds that hard bottom habitats are essential habitats for many marine fisheries, including but not limited to lobster. That's something that is, kind of called out in those, and was something similar in the other order for the other wind farm. So there's a bunch of comments related to those impacts and potential impacts directly. And I think it was important to include those. That way, when we're evaluating reports, we have some criteria that's a little bit set, and we kind of understanding and a little bit of a framework on what impacts we're trying to avoid and impacts that are there. That way, if we get 2 years down the road and commissions turned over those things, to have those memorialized, I think I felt was important. So then just to kind of run through the conditions, obviously there's number 19 for the filing of the final Benthic monitoring plan. That's something that they finalized with the state, that they have to get back to us. Then there's the applicant for the bottom profiling, detailing bottom composition, sediment profile, species composition, topography. That's there, and then kind of some video monitoring with that. Notification that we'll be getting for the work starting and going on. This was a suggestion, number 22 was a suggestion we've gotten before, that any section of the cable that requires armoring shall mimic the surrounding seafloor. Post-construction survey within 60 days. The timeframe and content of the survey may be modified upon request to the commission or specified differently by Mass DEP. So I don't know what Mass DEP is going to finally issue them for their permit. And then copies of that will have to get filed. And then 24 is the one I think we talked about a little bit and tried to get this in a way that made some sense. So it's just should a report or monitoring require further action as determined by Mass DEP or the commission in consultation with Mass DEP, the applicant shall provide a detailed mitigation or restoration plan as part of that action. Should offsite mitigation be needed, a new filing shall be filed with the Conservation Commission detailing that work. So if we order work done, they have to come back and deal with it. But I think given the nature of the project and that having Mass DEP involved is going to be something that's going to be important to do with that. And then there's the time of year restriction, and then the minimization of turbidity. So I tried to capture everything that we had gotten in there. Hopefully we did, and tried to give us all a little bit of leeway to work with, so everyone kind of knows the expectations and we're covered. So hopefully I got close.
Thank you, Jeff.
And just real quickly, sorry to interrupt, we'll point out that we did, knowing the comments there, I had spoken with Pat Johnson, who's on, in case we have any questions for clarity. It looks like their team is here to answer any questions if there's some questions related to that for clarity purposes.
Thank you, Jeff. Ian, I see your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So in provision 23, on the third line, I believe time frame is 2 words, and I think may be modified is in fact 2 words. So, and and I'm afraid I forget why. I think we talked about deciding not to do with the annual report on ongoing conditions as part of the certificate of compliance. Could you refresh my memory, please, or tell me why you think that isn't necessary? Thank you.
Thank you,
So,
Ian.
sure. I mean, I think we're happy to probably include as, the annual report that's filed. I think part of the things that's tricky with these projects, right, is going through so many jurisdictions and then having state and federal jurisdiction is, as we're moving through the permitting process, we're not for certain all of the requirements that are going to get put on by those similar interests. And I think that makes it complicated. So I think that's why having them just file all of those reports with the commission gives us still the opportunity, if you guys have questions or concerns, we can certainly bring them in even more than annual if we want to, right? If we have a report that comes in that they filed for NOAA that comes in and we look at it and say, well, that's a problem, you guys need to come in, they can come in. Or if it doesn't, it doesn't. But I think the reporting requirements are going to be, at least the experience of the last one, are pretty extensive and robust, where they're doing, I don't know, anywhere from like 5 to 10 reports on environmental condition as they go, that we'll be getting all of those copies. So if we have questions, I was trying not to do it to limit us and then not have it specific to a specific report, if that makes sense.
I totally get your point, Jeff. And the last thing I want to do is add to the burdens that they already have, in a sense. For I'm not asking for duplication in any way. So I was just wondering if there will be. I assume the feds or the state will be asking for annual reports, right, Pat?
More than probably.
Yes, there are quite a few reports. I would want to check. I don't know if Holly or Hans, you want to come off camera. I'm trying to recall which would be technically annual. There's a variety that the timing of which, especially from the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management at the federal level and from Mass DEP, that are going to be in various time increments. Any, Hans, that you would describe as annual?
So there are a number that are tied to post-construction reporting. And, off the top of my head, annual, I'm not sure, there are various reporting requirements that come at various intervals throughout the project. I'm not, so there are very likely some, but, right now, so following throughout the life of the project, if there is an annual, I don't have one off the top of my head, but, I'm happy to provide sort of a reporting matrix so there's an understanding of what sort of reporting that, if there, assuming there is something that is annual, you'll at least have a notice about it. But go ahead, Jeff, I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to hop in. I I think given a little experience with the last one, I know Hans and Holly both worked on the Vineyard Wind one too, is some of these reports, Ian, also is the time interval changes over time where they start more regularly and then they'll start to space out as they kind of get the review that's there. So when it initially starts, right, you have your post-construction, and then I want to say the last one, I feel like they had to do another one in pretty short order to show that it was there. And then after the first two, I want to say, and I could be wrong, this is just off the top of my head, it's been a while since I've looked, it's spaced out to either 18 or 24 months, and then they can kind of roll from there. It's a little like Natural Heritage does that too for on land things, where that reporting requirement will start at 1 year and 2 years. And then after you've demonstrated compliance for that time, it'll stretch out to 2 and then to 5. That's typically what happens on projects like this as well. Is they just
Thank you for your explanation. Thank you, Hans.
But they have to provide us all those protocols as well as they get them finalized. So we'll get that that information and that matrix that Hans was just talking about too. So
I shouldn't have used
all that once they're
quite at the
finalized.
level I used, obviously. So it was a rather generalized question. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. Mark, I see your hand up, and then Maureen, I saw yours.
Yes, thank you. Actually, during the hearing, we discussed various monitoring aspects of it, and I'm sure the federal and the state require it, but there's no reference to it in our decision. So I'd be curious to know, I mean, 24 and 20, well, 24 really is the only one that mentions monitoring post-construction. There's several monitoring pre-construction. But what is our, how will we get information on how the cable is doing from year to year to year, as we do for the, say, Wisconsin Beach underwater monitoring? Will there be video monitoring or ground penetrating radar monitoring or what?
Jeff, go ahead.
I'm just going to take them all. So I thought about that too, Mark, and we have looked in it. So they put together a benthic monitoring plan for DEP and Division of Marine Fisheries. And that's where you get that post-construction survey over time as part of that, because they have to monitor that. I know we have the video monitoring component pre. Most benthic monitoring plans include some level of that post as well, because it's a really slick and easy way to see what actually is on the bottom is to put a camera down and cover the area, and then you can analyze it. And I know that the notice that came in included that kind of even pre-installation as part of the filing. That's what we see. We see it Wisconsin too. I mean, I wish maybe next time, if these guys are back for a different project or a different group, we'll get back out the copy of the Vineyard Wind, or either this one, the benthic monitoring plan that's in place for the drafts of those, so everyone can see what's included in those. Hopefully that answered your question.
Well, it kind of does, but those are all pre-installation. There's nothing, they don't mention anything post-installation.
So the benthic is pre and post.
Doesn't say that.
Oh, it doesn't. Okay.
Yeah, I can speak to that a little bit, Mark. So as Jeff was mentioning, so we are going to file that in condition 19. We have this requirement to file that benthic monitoring plan pre. But then as Jeff was alluding to, we have every expectation that DEP will require a post benthic monitoring plan as a condition. We don't yet know the time increments that DEP will have for that. But I think rest assured that will be part of our DEP approval.
Thank you.
Jeff, go ahead.
Sorry, and to clarify, it's just kind of confusing because they're not in order. So we list, Mark, within 20, where we're looking for, bottom profiles with composition and sediment and species composition and topography. And then in 23, we have the applicant shall provide a post-construction survey that mimics the pre-construction survey. So they have to essentially do the same survey twice, one pre and one post, and then still do the benthic monitoring plan that's approved by the state that we'll see before they start the project.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Actually, so, Madam Chair, may I?
Yes, I think Maureen had her hand
I
up.
beg your pardon. Sorry, Maureen.
Thank you, Ian. I just wanted to say to Jeff that I think you've done yeoman work on this draft order. I mean, this is the fact that there are so many agencies and none of this is finalized yet. I think you've drafted this so that we will get what we need when we need it. And I went through it trying to think of all the things that it could be, and I every time I thought of something, then you caught it in the next paragraph. So I want to say thank you for your drafting job. And then I do want to pick up on something that I don't know, it's either Pat or Hans mentioned. Since monitoring is something that we keep, kind of yammering about. One of you mentioned there might be a monitoring schedule. That wasn't the word you used, a matrix or something. And so if we, I don't know if there's a way to be part of the record, I guess. Maybe that's the best way to do it. I was trying to think of how, so that if somebody else, because people have mentioned to me, the right whales or something, I say, well, that's not in our particular purview, but I think if part of the record shows the many pieces and timings of monitoring, I think that simply would be helpful. And I don't know if that's something that you can provide, or can provide going forward or something. I'm not asking for more work to get done. I was just hoping you would have something already so that we would know when these reports are coming up. It'd be an easy way to look at that.
Hans, you want to speak to that? Sounds like something we can try to put together and share with Jeff.
Yeah, so we will be doing this as either the pre-construction kickoff in preparation for that, or what we call post-construction handover. It'll be one of those phases of the project, and I don't see any issue doing that. It's just, I think I think we can do it pre-construction, so prior to the start of construction offshore.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ian, I know you had your hand up. Oh,
Yes. Thank you, Madam Chair. So I wonder if I might suggest a slight revision to the first sentence in condition 23, and where it says the applicant shall provide a post-construction survey that mimics the pre-construction survey demonstrating any impacts within 60 days of initial construction. And I hope you don't think that my mind is too devious, but it occurred to me that if there was no impacts, they wouldn't have to provide the post-construction survey. And so I wondered if we should phrase it, cross out demonstrating any impacts and rephrase it so that it says the applicant shall provide a post-construction survey that mimics the pre-construction survey within 60 days of initial construction to demonstrate any impacts that may have occurred. And I'm dog sitting, and so I'm going to have to go see what's happening. Excuse me.
Jeff, I know I had seen your hand up. What do you think about that kind of wordsmithing?
Yeah, I mean, I think it gets to the same point. So just to get through really quickly, I just kind of rewrote it really fast here. So it would now read, the applicant shall provide a post-construction survey that mimics the pre-construction survey within 60 days of initial construction to demonstrate any impacts. And then to go with that, to what we were talking about with Hans a second ago, I just added another condition I actually numbered it in as 20. So everything kind of shifted down one. I don't think that makes a huge difference, but I just put the applicant shall provide a listing of all required monitoring requirements and timing for the commission to reference to ensure all requirements within Nantucket waters are being met. So it's just a list that says a list. This is when they're due, and we have it, and then we can look at it and make sure that they get in. And I think that's there. And I didn't reference it to be prior to the start of work because there may be one that gets added in after they've started from someone, that then they can just update that list with the commission and say, we have to now do a bird survey in this area that we didn't foresee, but it's going to come in. And then, like I said, it's just a list that we can reference. It's not a, hopefully not a crazy deal. I'm going to guess that you guys at Park City are going to have a million lists of reports that you have to do and keep. That having a list of all your reports is probably the least of your worries. So
I would say I would suggest make it as a pre-construction filing that will be amended as required.
Sure. So I'll change it to say prior to the start
of offshore
of installation.
Cable installation. Yeah.
The applicant shall provide a list of all required monitoring requirements are being met, and then I'll add at the end. This list is to be updated with any changes for the duration of the project.
I would say duration of construction or the construction phase. Hans, would that be appropriate?
Yeah,
like that
because
better.
any subsequent changes are covered in the later conditions. Or
Yeah.
so.
No, and I think the change for just construction, Pat, is probably good because the project is going to last probably a lot longer than construction. Hopefully, that's the plan.
And I tied it to construction because I want to make sure you guys get it.
Yeah.
Any other amendments, questions about this one? Looks like no. Oh, Mark,
Can I move for approval as amended?
you can. So Mark's made the motion to approve as amended. Is there a second? Seconded by Maureen. So by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Arisman, aye. Golding,
Aye.
Philip,
Aye.
Williams.
And I'll have to sign a Mullen thing tomorrow with Jeff.
So that carries unanimously. Thank you, everybody, for the
And
team.
if I may make an observation, in the Wall Street Journal today, there's an article, Offshore Wind Energy Collides with Fishing. And of which that's not the reason why I'm bringing it up. It mentions that the US had 7 offshore wind turbines installed as of 2021, compared with 5,852 in Europe, according to the Global Wind Energy Council Industry Group. So I look forward to cracking a bottle of champagne when you get it up and running, and you have my absolute best wishes going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. If I might just say, Chairman, our company just wants to thank you, Chair, Jeff, and all the members of the commission for your great questions during our hearings and for your professionalism. And we very much appreciate your time and consideration of our filing.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we're happy to see, clean energy getting off the ground here. So. All right, so this will move us on. We don't have Nicholson. Jeff, do you have,
Yeah, we do.
oh, we do?
Isn't that the one we just got the number for?
Yeah, oh, Jeff just wordsmithed it up. You are our hero tonight, Jeff.
He loves it.
I don't want more
Zoom.
paperwork than I need later or to carry stuff as long as possible, especially for a project that doesn't have any waivers or anything crazy. So
yeah,
this was Nicholson. It was for a dwelling and a driveway. There's no pools, nothing fancy. So I just had our standard fill provision, and then we've been adding that no fertilizer or other agricultural chemicals within the 50. And that's what
I'll
I
make
put.
that motion.
Great, motion made by Linda. Is there a second? Seconded by Maureen. So by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Arisman, I, Golding,
Aye.
Phillips,
Aye.
Williams.
Aye.
All right, that carries unanimously. And now I gotta go back. That moves us on to 9 Columbus Avenue Nominee Trust at 9 Columbus Ave. Which was the one right by Long Pond.
Yes. Let me get her. This is the one with the crazy coastal banks.
Yeah. The policy coastal banks, as David calls them. I think that's a great word.
Well, it's what they are, right? And they're these funky retaining walls that happen to provide a vertical change in slope within the flood zone. They're not the only retaining walls that act like it. It's just always weird when you try to wrap your head around the fact that the coastal bank is kind of part of the house. It's always weird to me because it's not really contributing. I mean, I guess it's contributing as a vertical barrier to storms, but do you really want your house to be the vertical barrier to storms? Probably not, but there's where we are. So I honestly didn't really, I had our fill condition that's there, but I didn't really have any other conditions.
Jeff, I'm wondering, just since they are doing that planting, if we should have the native species one in there.
Yeah.
Right, so I just really quickly added condition 20 that the applicant shall provide photographs of the replanted areas on an annual basis until a certificate of compliance is issued. You really see it then. And then 21, the replanting areas shall be native species with no cultivars allowed.
Thank you, Jeff. Any other thoughts on this one? And if not, would somebody like to make a motion to issue as amended?
So moved.
Motion made by Linda. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Maureen. So by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Erisman, I, Golding,
Aye.
Phillips,
Aye.
Williams.
Aye.
All right, that carries unanimously. And that moves us on to the Carol W. Dean Revocable Trust at 48 West Comet Road.
This was for the beach stairs. I didn't really have anything.
If nobody has any amendments, would somebody like to make a motion to issue as drafted?
So moved.
No, just a second.
Oh,
Excuse me.
yep.
Where are they going to put them? Where are they going to store them?
We can add a 19 really quickly.
I think that has some relevance to this. Thank you.
How about when the stairs are not in use, they are to be stored outside the 50-foot setback.
Thank you.
I'll reiterate my motion.
Okay, to include the amendment, Linda?
Yep, to include the amendment.
Perfect. Is there a second? Seconded by Maureen. So by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Arisman, I, Golding,
Aye.
Phillips,
Aye.
Williams.
Aye.
All right, that carries unanimously. That moves us on to the Pack Rim Realty Trust at 196 Hummock Pond Road.
I do have a couple additions from our discussion. So I have our normal suite of pool conditions, the no fertilizer, agricultural chemicals, those things that are there. But I did add an additional finding number 2 from our discussion. And it just says, the commission finds that the view of the wetland from Hummock Pond Road should be maximized and that effort should be made to provide viewshed corridors in the largest width possible, the largest viewing width possible without visual interruption.
Awesome. Ian?
Could we add on to that by vegetation or by plantings or something? Which is going to lead me into a commissioner's comment going forward. But Ashley, thank you for bringing that up. I think these things are vital as they disappear around the island. I mean, it really is astonishing when you think of it. And we also had the requirement to make sure that they were native plantings or non-drought related. Excuse me, I'm mumbling again.
No, I was just going to mention that one too, because it makes me nervous. We get non-natives and potentially invasives back there.
Right. But I was pleased that the owner seemed receptive within the constraints of the lot. So.
Right. So the quick revision. So I added a condition 27 that all plantings are to be native with no cultivars allowed. And then the additional finding now says, the commission finds that the view of the wetland from Hummock Pond Road should be maximized and that effort should be made to provide viewshed corridors in the largest viewing width possible without visual interruption, including plantings.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
Any other thoughts on this one? And if not, would somebody like to make a motion to approve as amended? Mark, you making that motion? Ian, I'll give you the second. So by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Arisman, aye. Golding,
Aye.
Phillips,
Aye.
Williams.
Aye.
All right, that carries unanimously. We are through our drafts. Yay. So that moves us on to other business approval of minutes. Unfortunately, the April 7th didn't make it into our packet again. Yeah, but we do have the 428 minutes in the packet.
What happened? Lisa even said she posted them. That's so weird.
Yeah, it got on the agenda, but it didn't actually get into the online packet.
All right, we'll get that fixed.
And I saw it today and I just thought, well, it's a late edition, so.
So Lisa and I are still getting into our groove on who's getting what posted all the time. So we're close.
Yeah.
Easy things to fix.
It's, I mean, she's like really very new in the scheme of things, so.
Yeah, and kind of got thrown right into the fire. So she, like, her first day of work was when we were trying to put together the SPPF administrative record. Not the best day to start. So she's doing awesome. She's tremendous.
Yeah,
but
the fact that she's still there, if that was her first task, is just says a lot.
Yeah. So, but no, Lisa is great. She's tremendous.
I have a question.
Yes.
Are you going to hold both of them?
Well, I thought we could go for the 428, but what's your question?
That was, are you going to vote on 428? Or are you just going to hold them both and run them all together? It's kind of up to you.
Yeah, I think we can vote on the 428 because it was the minutes made it in the packet.
Okay.
Yeah. And I didn't see anything that I felt needed changing. I don't know if anybody else.
No.
Yeah. So would somebody like to make a motion to approve the 428 minutes? Ian? I'll give you the motion and Mark the second. So by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Arisman, aye. Golding,
Aye.
Phillips,
Aye.
Williams,
Jane, I was in Memphis.
Oh, I thought you signed on at the end of that one,
I did.
like
but
an
there-
hour in.
Yeah, I did, once we got off the airplane.
Okay.
All right, I'll go ahead and vote for him. I just didn't hear some of the first like 2 or 3.
Okay. I just couldn't remember. So, that, carries unanimously. All right, so next we have our discussion of regulatory update.
Madam Chairman, I have to leave. I have to go pick up furniture before it gets any darker.
Okay, good.
I just want to say another well-run meeting as usual. You are the best chairman I've ever been on a board with. So there you go.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that, Linda, and I hope the furniture's not too heavy.
Oh, I've got very strong people coming.
Good.
It's not me.
All right. Well, that's good. We hope you have a good night.
Thanks, you too.
All right, thank you. All right, so that moves us on again to discussion of regulatory updates.
All right. If it's all right, Madam Chair, I'll hop in. So now that we've adopted the codified regulations, I've had them ready. Tomorrow morning in your inboxes, you're going to get a marked up draft of the last like 4 years of comments from Ian and from Seth and from everybody and a few other providers of a draft set of regulations to review. I just wanted to put it on the agenda tonight. I'm going to touch really briefly on some highlights that are in there. There's a new filing fee structure.
Yes.
Who do we know? Do we know a Helena?
Could we have an inflation component built in at this point?
Well, we'll have to see. But we have those. We've been working on a resiliency and sea level rise component to the regulations to go over. We revised some performance standards related to that a little bit. So there'll be new filing fees, a little bit of tweaks to procedures. Some of the things in there are things that I've talked about before. We're proposing at a staff level a new category of what we're calling minor activities. It kind of reflects the state act, where if you're simply applying to only do something like, I want to remove my lawn and put some plantings in that may be minor, or I need to install a short section of split rail fence, that there may be a new category. So instead of having to file a whole application, something more minor, and some of it may either go through like small subcommittee or staff approval, but it's again, things that are not, they're borderline maintenance, I think is our way to put it. And the state act accounts for it for a little bit, nothing crazy, but something different. Hopefully some of it will help us administratively and lighten the load of filing so we can focus on more important filings a little bit more. And so remember what all of them are on the top of my head. There's a set of pool guidelines that are attached to them now as an appendix that everyone will see. There is also a section of what we're calling view shed management. So it kind of talks about what we talked about tonight a little bit, but also in hopes to try to curb out vista cutting. So I think those are some of the highlights that are there. Oh, and there's also a little bit with the pools, a little bit of an illicit discharge section too, to capture some of that. So some of the highlights, you'll see them all, it'll all be marked up in red on there. I'll send it out as a Word document to everybody. So if people have suggestions, just hit track changes and send them back to me, and we can get them added in and marked up. Or if you can't do it that way, just type out a regular list and send them in, and we can get them marked up and turned around. I think the hopes are to have a really substantive discussion. I mean, I know 526 is looking long, so we may have to do a special in between, but one that's just focused on the regs to do it. And then I'm going to go ahead and advertise the public hearing on these for the first meeting in June, the June 9th meeting. And then that way, if we choose to adopt them at that point, we're good to go. So hopefully we can make that happen, and it gives us the whole month of June to get them addressed. Even if we got to sneak in another special meeting or two, we can do that. So I think we can get it done. I think like I said, we have the draft 100% ready to go. I just didn't want to send out 3 drafts of the same thing and have people get confused. So, but we have been ready, just waiting for the codification to get accepted. So when the format looked different, everyone at least knew why it was different.
Thank you, Jeff, for all of your hard work putting that together for us. And I know RJ had some suggestions from the Land Council and all commissioners who commented. I'm really hoping we can hit the home run on this one. So, any questions?
8
Ian?
fingers and 2 thumbs up. I don't know why it's not coming through, but there we go.
Yeah. So if there aren't any questions, just again, expect that in your inbox, and remember not to reply all, but to reply directly to Jeff. Yeah.
Yes.
Very hopeful about this one. So that moves us on to enforcement actions, potential enforcement actions.
Yeah, so we've had responses from the one we issued out. And that may be a little bit more complicated. It may involve some of the abutter parcels as well for some work that's happened. So we're trying to sort that out a little bit and figure out what all happened where and where the property lines are. So we may have some additional enforcements that come from that. We're just trying to get everything documented and buttoned up on our end, and meant to get to it before the meeting. But between town meeting last week and then getting ready for stuff today, just didn't have a chance to close it out completely. So we'll have that to everyone soon. So we'll have it well before our next meeting. So I might even be really sneaky and add it on to our open session posting for next Tuesday's executive session that we've tentatively scheduled. I may actually sneak that 4-7 minutes on there too. Get that and just brush some of those off. We got to open up an open session. We spend 2 minutes there. I don't think it's going to kill anybody.
Get it off the list before the 5:26. I'm all for it.
Yeah, and then we can go from there.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Jeff.
No problem.
That moves us on to reports. Ian, has Crack had any meetings?
Yes, we did, and we focused really for the most part on the most recent IPCC and NOAA reports that were released in February 2022, and they've downgraded their predictions on sea level rise going forward, to where they NOAA removed the extreme category entirely. And so we had a discussion about how to handle it. And I think, certainly speaking for myself, but also I think speaking the general tenor of the meeting was that we didn't want to do anything that would reduce the urgency of the town dealing with sea level rise. And so that was really the principal discussion. And, I think we're aware of how this fluctuates from year to year, depending on what information comes in. So that was pretty much it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. I'm going to have to look that up. I'm curious why they removed the extreme. So that's interesting.
They decided that their ice calculations in particular were off. And
CPC?
We did meet. We just a normal monthly meeting where we just reimburse all the various nonprofits who would apply for money, and we distributed those funds.
Awesome. NP and EDC?
We didn't have another meeting.
Okay. So that moves us on to commissioners' comments.
Yes, if I may, and through you to Jeff.
Yes.
So Jeff, I was out on Baxter Road last week, and nothing has been done about the access and the hedges planted on the public right of way at 71 Baxter Road. So, you know, I mean, where do we go from here? Because we obviously shouldn't have approved it, nor I don't see how we had the authority to do so, because they were applying as though the public right of way didn't exist. And so they now have their hedges blocking it, and they have a hedge at the bluff. So it gives every indication of being private, when in fact, when John Merson owned it, it was completely open and he mowed it. So
well, that's funny. Last time we had someone out there, I mean, you could get from the roadway out to the edge of the bluff. So we'll take a look again. I'll be honest, I haven't been on that site in a while.
yeah, no, you can. When you know it's a public access, you can go through the gap in the hedge on the driveway, but that hedge shouldn't be there. It's not their property. And then, you know, and when John Merson owned it, there wasn't a hedge there. And then when you go to the other end, on the bluff end, they've got a hedge there, which shouldn't be there because it's not their property. And so it just, unless you know it's there, you wouldn't dream of going to the edge of the bluff to have a look, because you would assume it was private. I mean, it's set up so it looks completely private still.
All right, we'll be out. I know Vince or Morgan has to be out there soon. We'll take a look again, and we'll take one of the zoning folks out there for the stuff up by the roadway.
That would be great. Would you please? I mean, I
Yeah.
know you've got a lot on your plate, but it's just.
That's right. We have human beings that have the time and ability to make that happen. So we'll definitely take a look. Some of the stuff that's out on the roadway end is not necessarily within our jurisdiction. So it's more of a zoning and roads and right-of-way question, but I happen to be able to know how to get a hold of those folks too. So we'll try to get it resolved. I do know that site was scheduled to get one of the actual public way markers. So I might try to talk to Alan and find out when that's supposed to go in.
That would be great. Thank you.
I'll find out and I'll report back.
I know I had 2 commissioners' comments, and they kind of revolve around enforcements. I'm curious where we are with some of our longer standing enforcements, like the Hollywood Farm and the 119 Baxter Road, that were kind of on the long road of tickets, but going kind of nowhere through our process. I'm just wondering if there are any updates.
Shockingly, I was able to find, well, I wasn't able to, is the now person who has clear control over the property at Hollywood Farm contacted us in the last week, and we have scheduled a visit to go out there now. That was in dispute for a while, and I'm not going to rehash what was in the paper and all of those things. There were some things that were outside of all of our control that were happening that are resolved to a point now where someone has the ability to affect change out there without other things happening. So we'll be out there. So I know that was longstanding. 119 Baxter, I know the town through zoning and building has filed an official complaint on that property. I'll find out what the status of that is. So that is probably due for court at some point here in the near future.
Okay.
So I will get those dates for you exactly.
Thank you, Jeff. And then my other request is, can you talk to one of the Larrabee owners, or it might be multiple, because I truthfully don't know where those boundaries are exactly, but the silt fences look hellacious from like every direction. And it's especially bad where they put that access road off of Millbrook.
Yes.
That they need to address those.
So amazingly enough, actually have already done that. So they're supposed to have them fixed hopefully by the end of this week, start of next week, because I told them that I would be reappearing to inspect all of them by the 15th. So they are on borrowed time before we show back up.
Okay, thank you so much.
I had to go out there for a different site and happened to run into someone leaving the driveway and just had a little quick stop.
Nice. Good timing.
Unlucky for them. So, lucky for me.
Definitely makes it easier. Well, if there aren't any other commissioners' comments, we'll move it on to administrator staff reports.
Yeah, I'll try to go quick so we can get out of here. Just to remind everyone that the order for doing remote meetings is set to expire at the start of July. And unless the governor renews that, we're all going to have to get back together. I've already kind of told the town that we're not really interested in doing hybrid meetings. If we're going to do it, we're doing it in person. And they said, you can do whatever you want as long as you're meeting. That's there. And we also have available to us, I know it's not the most popular, but was in the space the other day, and it's actually, for our purposes, probably pretty good. And I like it because it's close, is the town has updated the inside of the ugliest building on Nantucket to be available for meeting spaces. And it'd be actually very similar for us back to the days of meeting. If we want to be there, I don't think anyone was on the board when we were at 37 Washington Street, but it would be more like there or upstairs in the police station than downstairs in the police station, where we'd all kind of have a large table that everyone could get around. And then there would be the peanut gallery, and we could put plans out on the table for people to see. And it's still all streamed onto YouTube, so anyone that wants to watch at home can still watch at home. But that would be it. It would just be recorded for that purposes, and we wouldn't be taking comments or doing those things from something remote, unless a commissioner was remoting in, like we've done before by phone, or we could even do that probably by Zoom if we really wanted to. But I think we should be starting to think about if we're okay with there. If people want to come see it, we can take a look as part of our next field view, and we can probably pop in there for people to see it before we settle on there or the police station. But we should probably be prepared for the governor to not extend that order. And then if he does, we can stay like this. And if he doesn't, we're good to go. So still heads up to everybody. Or if anyone wants to come by, anytime you come by, we can get into that trailer pretty much whenever we want. So people want to see inside it, they can see inside it. That being said, we've already talked about reg updates. I just wanted to touch on really briefly, I promise, because David Haynes mentioned it a number of times tonight. For those who, I think everyone, or for the most part, has seen the result of town meeting, the town did pass the home rule petition to prohibit the use of fertilizers on Nantucket. It's important to remember still that it's a home rule petition. It's not actual law yet, just like the nip bottle prohibition still has to go, or in a little lighter vein, the topless part has to go to the State House and get approved there to come back. So those things haven't taken effect yet. So as we're reviewing applications, please keep in mind that fertilizers have not been prohibited on Nantucket as of yet. And I will tell everyone here, Roberto and I talked about it last night at the select board meeting as well. So if people want a longer explanation, we are here at Natural Resources and Health preparing for that not to pass at the State House, and are going to be suggesting some pretty significant changes to the current existing fertilizer regulations through the Board of Health. That way, if it passes at the State House and the ban gets implemented, we're ready and can deal with it there. And if it doesn't, we're continuing to address the known issues with that program. So we don't get word from the State House back and be like, well, we'll get back to you in 8 months and figure out what we're doing. We would rather do the work up front and get told that it was for naught and be ready just in case. And then we're prepared either way. So that's what's happening there. But I just wanted to remind everyone that those things haven't taken effect. So and we'll see where they go. But that's it for me. I don't think there's anything else.
Thank you, Jeff.
I lied. One last thing. They did announce last night at the select board meeting that committee vacancies are opening up for application, I believe. I don't remember the exact date that it's going. I know Maureen and Seth are on the end of their terms. So obviously you'll get the thing in the mail that lets you reapply if you want to reapply, but by all means.
Oh, I've reapplied already.
Perfect. I do know Dave and I had a chat the other day. He was in the office. Dave will not be reapplying. So there will be one seat available if people have anyone that they know that's interested to please pass on either the info or how to get it, as we're at least going to need one new commissioner for sure. So for what it's
When is
worth.
the deadline, Jeff, do you know?
I think
Off the top of my head, I don't know, but I can definitely let you know.
Well,
I have to look at the schedule again.
I could probably dig it up myself, so don't worry.
I'll send it around to the group tomorrow.
No,
So,
thank you.
Thank you, Jeff.
but I just want to remind people, if people have asked about it, or if you know someone who you think would be a good commissioner, by all means, encourage them to shoot them my way. I'm happy to talk to anyone directly if they have questions. The one thing that I do always remind folks is, even if you're interested in just a singular topic or singular issue, we do over 200 applications a year, that you have to give the same attention to filing one as you do to filing 201, and you have to cover all of them in between. It's just not a specific issue kind of place. So people need to be prepared to do the work and listen to everything and be involved. So if you have someone, please have them apply. I think the more candidates, always the better.
I wish there was a way to get that maybe message to the people making the appointments that we see all of these diverse applications. So it's important to have well-rounded individuals.
I may have known someone who has told some of them directly to their face what I have just said. So,
well, that sounds awesome. And then Jeff, I'm assuming that Ben has not gotten in touch with you, so no executive session for tonight.
no, I don't think we have any updates. I think tonight was kind of a placeholder in case something came up.
Mhm.
But I think we addressed everything. We have it scheduled. We'll post it for next Tuesday, tomorrow. So we'll be legal there. And then I know we're just kind of on the clock for a number of things for what's going to happen.
Okay, and that's a 4 p.m. start or 5?
We can do 4 p.m.
Okay. All right. Well, that gets us to the end of our agenda, only slightly after 8, which is like a miracle for us lately. Would anybody like to make a motion to adjourn?
Let me think about it.
I'm not sure.
Second.
Mark's going to be early to ice cream.
Right.
I'm all over it.
All right. So by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Arisman, aye. Golding,
Aye.
Phillips.
Aye.
All right. That carries unanimously. Thank you, everybody.
I
Thank
meant to
you.
vote
Thank you.
ayes.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Terry.
everyone.
Take care. Good night.
Night, everyone.
Aye, Terry.
Oh, baby.